Okay, here's a question. What is your relationship with your intuition? What is your relationship with your intuitive self? This really is the starting point. So put to one side animal communication for the moment. Put to one side the thought of, I don't know if I can communicate with animals. It's so random. Sometimes I get it, sometimes I don't. Just park it to one side, okay? Because if your relationship and your understanding and your development of your intuitive self is needs a repair job, then to try and communicate with animals will feel like a struggle. Okay. So I'm going to ask you this question. What is your relationship with your intuitive self? So Sarah says, I trust it. I have unconditional trust in the universe. Kirsty says, it's my fun, playful soul friend. Beautiful. So this is the thing to, if you're going to want to get better or focus on working at or developing or become deeper with it or expand, this is what you look at. Whenever you think to yourself, oh, I seem to have really struggled with this communication, or today I really don't feel like I'm in the right energy place to do communicating with animals, or I don't seem to have the motivation, in your body posture kind of reflects that, or you have a lot of fear or anxiety, just park the communication to one side and go, what's going on with my intuitive self? Am I living an intuitive life? Are you living an intuitive life? Okay. And how do you connect with your intuition? How do you connect with your intuitive senses? Because they're both the same thing. Your intuition uses your intuitive senses in order to send you the information for you to become aware of. Okay. So Sarah M says, I'm a bit anxious around it. Yes, reframe. You did it. I'm excited about my intuitive self and excited about further developing my relationship with her. Brilliant. Brilliant. Okay. Kirsty Lauren says, great question. Question mark? Kirsty says, mostly, but would like to live with it more. Yeah. And it's an ongoing process. There will be days when you're so together with your intuitive self, and then there will be days when it's like you're so far apart. It's like, what's happened? I'm like so into logic, I'm so into analysis, I'm so into all these kind of head stuff, and I feel like I've lost connection with my intuitive self. So it will vary. So remember that, it does up and down. Hopefully, not this. Okay. So that's what you're aiming for. Kind of a smooth bit. So Ray says, excited about my intuitive self then. Yes, let's reframe. Ego gets in the way. Well, if you're aware, this is it. It's not about like saying, ego, never ever visit me. It's acknowledging and go, hey, ego, I recognize you. Intuitive self meets ego, and let's have a conversation. Okay. And if your intuitive self and you have a really good relationship, then you can help the ego to just take a back seat and not be so controlling, and not to think the ego has to protect you all the time, because guess what? Your intuitive self can protect you. Okay. Right. So that is your relationship with your intuition. So in order to be more intuitive, or to be more deeply intuitive, you also need to have developed and become connected with your intuitive senses. Most of us might associate intuition with like a gut feeling or a sense of knowingness, but actually using our intuitive senses, we have all the other senses that we can access, okay? And let's think for a moment. Instead of worrying, so this would be the ego, instead of worrying about, can I communicate with animals? Am I able to? I'm not relaxed enough. Do I have the ability to? I have so many blocks. Can you notice, have you noticed that the struggles and the blocks are said in statement form? Okay, so be very aware of what comes out of your mouth. Usually a block will be phrased in a statement. The reason for that is because the block stems from a belief system that you've held on for a long time. Okay, so when you find yourself saying that, you can say, oh, I just can't relax, or I can't meditate. Statement. Always shift that statement into a question, so that it allows you to move away from the pre-programmed beliefs that you've already held. Okay, so that's one little tip about just being aware of how blocks so quickly come into play, because they come from a belief system. That's why I'm saying to you, it's not just solely with animal communication that you struggle with. If you have got blocks or struggles with animal communication, it comes from already what has been pre-programmed belief system that you've held on. And now because you have something that you really love to do, it then gets triggered. Okay, so let's look at, instead of looking at how you think you need to communicate with animals, I want you to shift it at the moment around the other way. How do animals communicate with humans? You think that would be obvious for us to know this, but I've recently been made aware that all the things that we read in books about learning animal communication, courses, workshops, videos, it's all about how can we communicate with animals. So let's now ask the question instead. How do animals communicate with humans? Any answers? How do animals communicate with humans? So let me just catch up with a few of your comments here for a minute. Margaret says, I'm still learning to do this. Is when life gets busy, I forget to check in with it. I generally sense it and feel things, or it's a sense of knowingness. Going inward brings other senses forward. Absolutely. Okay, so Sarah B says, the biggest block remover for me was doing a meditation in nature, not a guided one, just breathing and opening my heart. Okay, any answers to how animals communicate with people, humans? So Lauren says, pictures, physical gestures, energetic. Yep. Put ideas in our head. I like it. Maria says, in my case, they look at me into my eyes, the way I feel they want to tell me something. Yep. Expressions, body language, behavior, and a feeling in our heart. Kirsty says there's soul energy. Now, you know me by now. Whenever you write something with a question mark at the end, I want you to expand on it. Okay. Because usually it means you got a sense of something and you stop there. So I don't want you to stop there. So the question mark is really ... So we're into reframes today. So Kirsty, where you've answered how animals communicate with people and you've written their soul energy, instead of the question mark, do ... expand on what you mean or what you were receiving about that. So Verena says through behavior, physical cues. Yep. So this is if you are in the presence of the animal. So what if you were not in the presence of the animal? How do animals communicate with humans? So yes, telepathically, energetically. Beautiful. And how does the telepathy and how does the energy, how do they use that? How do animals use telepathy and energy to communicate with us? How do they send us information? How do they get our attention when we are not even sometimes, well, we're not consciously um, asking them anything? You know, have you all had, has any of you had that experience where you genuinely are just going on about your business and then an animal, you know, pops into your mind, or you're taking a walk and suddenly it's spontaneous. You haven't set out to communicate with them. So how is it that they use telepathy and energy to get all of what you've described there, you know, visuals, thoughts in your head, emotions? How do they do that? So Margaret says energetically, body language, yeah, vocally, barking. That is if you're, you know, with them. So Sarah says a feeling. You get a feeling, so you get emotions. So what we're describing here already are the intuitive senses of visual, of sound and smell and taste, physical sensations, emotions, and knowing. So from what we've received so far from everyone at this point, so if you're watching on replay, please make sure, you know, you also play along. The sound, smell, and taste is not as strong, which is, you know, understandable for us, but strong for the animal, which I'll talk about. So Lauren says, I don't know, please tell us. You're going to have to help me, Lauren, what that reference is. Okay, so Margaret says, image pops into mind or emotionally words. Cool. So you're all really in touch with what the intuitive senses are that animals use in order to send us information. So how does it feel to look at it from that perspective, that it's the animals communicating with us rather than thinking, I need to communicate with the animal? Does it have a different angle for you? Does it feel different in terms of when you want to approach an animal for a conversation, knowing that they want to communicate with you, they want to send you information, they want to send you messages, they want to tell you what's bothering them? Okay, so Angela says emotions, images, thoughts. Maria says, I think they just knock on our energy as if saying, please, can I come in? Yeah, they can do that. Lauren says, how do they send us telepathic communication? Yes. Let's have, yeah, which is, how do they send it to us? I would say it's the same as the way we send it to them. You know, they are able to, they are sentient beings, so they have emotions, particularly animals that live with us, because, and we live with them, you know, we either become our animals. Oh yeah, here's a good one. How many of you start to feel like your animals, the way they behave sometimes and the way they feel and think and react to certain things? I know that more and more I'm beginning to show some behaviors or reactions that are actually characteristics of my animal. Okay, so Ray says, yeah, different angles, synchronicities. Yes, I agree with that. Particularly animals in spirit, I get synchronicities. So Lauren, you're saying, aha. So is that to do with, you know, how animals send us telepathically? Yeah. So can you see, instead of coming from that angle of, oh, it's me that needs to communicate with animals, it's me that needs to, you know, work out how to do it. Actually, animals want to talk to us. Lauren says, I'm part horse. Yes. Part horse, part dog, part cat. Okay, so Margaret says, I think I'm starting to recognize that as I'm noticing how my thoughts may suddenly change, accompanied by images. Yeah, it's really being animal, isn't it? You know, when an animal is communicating with us, do they, I mean, are they like me right now, where I stick to a certain topic and I make sure I, you know, make it so that it's something that you can follow along, you know, because I'm presenting something? No, they don't, because they're natural. They don't have the agendas that we do. And they live in that present moment. They're expressive, they're instinctive, they're reactive. So the information is going to come through similar. Unless, of course, there is us almost like guiding the conversation and where it's going. So that's different. And we also know when the animals are guiding us, and we're going with the flow, we sometimes don't know where it's going because they don't worry about that. Whereas with human to human, we've learned, haven't we, that a conversation has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So, okay. So that's your intuitive senses. So I want to talk also about and help you to get back in touch with your intuitive sense that you are very familiar with, the one that you go to a lot or mostly, your strong intuitive sense.